Here is a hydrangea arborescens or smooth hydrangea called Invincible Spirit 2. I showed this one in my pruning videos earlier in the season, and it has absolutely grown to its original size, even though I took about a third of the plant off when I pruned it. And let's see what the result or the pruning, what it did. So we have to go quite a ways down into the plant to see where I actually pruned it. So let's find somewhere that I had cut it back. So here is the result of the pruning. And if we take a look in here, you can see, hopefully, where I cut this plant back. And where I cut it back, we now have 3 stems coming out with 3 flowers on top. So cutting a stem will result in 2 or more stems forming, and the more stems that you can get, the more flowers you'll have. Look at this hydrangea. It is absolutely huge and magnificent. This is an incredible. I also showed this one in my pruning videos. I took it back quite a ways, and it produced all new stems with all of these beautiful flowers on them. See if I can get an idea for you how big these flowers actually are next to my hand. Another version of a smooth hydrangea. This is actually an improved version of the original Annabelle hydrangeas. Next to this lovely statue is an oak leaf hydrangea, Hydrangea quercifolia. This one is called Gatsby Moon. And it has these very, very large, very, very heavy flowers. It is, oh, I'm hearing a hawk in the distance. Very interesting. I'm not sure what he's screaming about. Now, Gatsby Moon has very, very large flowers. And I do stake this plant. This plant is probably 5 or 6 feet tall, probably 8 to 10 feet wide. But the flowers are so large that, especially when they collect water during a rainstorm, they will pull these branches down. So a little staking will go a long way toward making the plant look a little more upright and look a little bit less sad in a rainstorm. But they're gorgeous flowers. To give you an idea, here I'll show you one of these flowers next to the size of my hand, and this flower isn't even open all of the way. Here is an oak leaf hydrangea, Hydrangea quercifolia. This one is called Ruby Slippers. The reason it's called Ruby Slippers is because the flowers turn a beautiful, brilliant red in the fall. Now, we just came through, a 4-day heat wave, and we did have some wilting on all of the hydrangeas. Water didn't help that wilting, it was just the extreme heat. And this is what happens when you get wilting. You get browning. So if you happen to see that your hydrangea are wilting regularly in the afternoon sun, you might want to think about moving them to a place where they only get morning sun. Your flowers and leaves will last longer, will stay beautiful longer. Here is another oak leaf hydrangea that's just getting started. And the flowers are really, maybe halfway toward being in bloom at this point. This one is in early day sun, afternoon shade, and seems very, very happy with it. At the top of the stairs, we have some mountain hydrangea, and this is a dwarf type of mountain hydrangea called Tiny Tough Stuff. The bees are going absolutely nuts over these flowers. Isn't that cool? You know, when I worked at a nursery, I remember people coming in and saying, I like to have some shrubs that are flowering, but I don't want to attract bees. Well, the truth of it is, if you have flowers, you're going to have bees. Now, Tiny Tough Stuff is a dwarf mountain hydrangea. It's probably 3.5 feet tall. It's probably 5 feet wide. Very, very winter hardy. If you saw any of my earlier pruning videos, you'll see that I had to do very, very little to this one. All I had to do was cut out some of the dead growth, and there was very little of that. So a very reliable plant. Now here are two of the regular sized Tough Stuff hydrangeas, mountain hydrangeas. And these are in quite a bit of shade, actually a lot of shade. There's a very large magnolia tree overhead, and these get very little direct sun. And you can see that these are just getting going. This is Tough Stuff Red. And you can see the flowers are just starting to get bigger. Now, I showed you the Tiny Tough Stuff, and Tiny Tough Stuff was in a good bit of sun, all morning sun, which I think is the difference in how quickly these have been forming their flowers. But this is the last week of June, and I expect in another week or so for these flowers to be probably twice the size that they are right now. Now here I have two different types of Endless Summer hydrangea. Endless Summer was one of the first remontant hydrangea on the market, meaning hydrangea that bloom on old and new growth. The one I'm showing you right now is called Blushing Bride. It has predominantly white flowers, but they do have a tinge of either blue or pink, depending on the pH of the soil. And because I have acid soil, these have a tinge of blue, which you can just see on this one. Now the one next to it, which is very blue, is the original Endless Summer. These really just get going right around, I'd say, the third week of June. This is the last week of June. And these flowers will continue to get a little bit larger and a little bit bluer as the season progresses. But because it blooms on old and new growth, if we happen to have had a bad winter and there was significant dieback, we still would be getting flowers. They would just come out a little later in the season. It's the flowers on the old growth that comes out first. And you can see that this one obviously had very, very little dieback this past winter, and it is absolutely covered with beautiful flowers. Here is another big leaf hydrangea, or Hydrangea macrophylla. This is an old-fashioned variety called Nico Blue. Nico Blue only blooms on old growth. So you have to be very, very careful as far as pruning goes, and just hope that the winter is never too bad on it so that most of the hydrangea does survive. And in this case, you can see we had a reasonably mild winter, so I'm getting lots and lots of flowers on it. This is another one that really gets going somewhere around the third week of June, and now we're in the last week of June. The flowers start out with this very sort of greenish white color, and then as the season progresses, they get larger and the blooms become more and more blue. Now this is a hydrangea that does react to the soil pH. I have very acid soil, so all of my big leaf hydrangea tend toward blue. If you had very basic soil, they would tend more toward pink. But as you can see, this one is looking great. Now another comment I'll make is that this gets very, very little sunlight here. This is the north side of the house, and it gets maybe an hour of sun in the afternoon when the sun is high in the sky and is coming over the roof. But other than that, this is simply in a bright area, but very, very little direct sunlight, and it still does very, very well. Now I love this hydrangea. This is a very upright macrophylla or big leaf hydrangea. This is Let's Dance Moonlight. And the flowers start out very sort of greenish white and then pick up this sort of slightly purpley blue color. This is a hydrangea that is great for drying, and it is another one that is a rebloomer. So it does bloom on old and new wood. But actually all of these hydrangea together really look pretty. Now here is another big leaf hydrangea, Hydrangea macrophylla, that I showed you in my pruning video earlier in the season. This is a twist and shout. And if you saw that video, you probably remember that I was complaining that it is a floppy hydrangea, and I was giving it another chance, trying to prune it in a way to make it hopefully a little less floppy. But you can see the branches at the bottom are really flopping down. The saving grace for this hydrangea is that it has a beautiful flower color. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this one. I hate to have to keep staking them every year. I'd rather have them stay up on their own. Here is a very, very large lady in red hydrangea. This is a big leaf hydrangea, but it is a lace cap type. It is also one that only blooms on old growth. But it has lovely flowers. The bees love them. And you can see that very deep reddish stem on it. When I did my pruning video earlier this season, luckily again this was a year that we didn't have a whole lot of dieback, so all I had to do was clean it up. But you can see how it has produced all of these lovely, lovely lace cap flowers. And some of them are just getting started. This is what it looks like early on, with a very sort of greenish white petal and a green center. And then that ages to something much more blue, like this. These are ones that are also pH sensitive, and in my acid soil I get blue, whereas again if you had very basic or alkaline soil, they would tend toward pink or red. Now here's a hydrangea I really like. This is another Hydrangea macrophylla or big leaf hydrangea. This one is called Bloomstruck. It is a very, very upright plant, and the flowers tend to be very, very purple. You can see they start with that sort of greenish white color and then go to purple. Now, a lot of my hydrangea suffered in that heat wave that we had, and you can see that there's been browning on the leaves, which I wouldn't ordinarily see. We tried to give them extra water, but when you have temperatures in the mid-90s to 100, sometimes it just doesn't matter. This is another reblooming or remontant hydrangea. It does bloom on old and new, but this one's been very good. I've had very little winter dieback on this, even when the winters have been a little more severe. So I'm very pleased with this one.